Somebody that just loves to learn, and another child grows up to be somebody you just love to burn. Mom loves the both of them. You see, it's in the blood. Both kids are good to mom. Blood's thicker than the mud. It's a family affair.
It's a family affair.
It's a family affair.
It's a family affair.
What a bad. Still checking each other out. Hey, nobody wants to blow. Nobody wants to be left out. You can't leave cause your heart is there. But you can't stay cause you've been somewhere else. You can't cry cause you look broke down. But you're crying anyway cause you're all broke down. It's a family affair.
It's a family affair.
It's a family affair. Yeah, a family affair. Somebody that just loves to learn, and another child.
Welcome to News ULM. I'm Rod Willis, your host, and we have a power-packed show today. This is election season. African Americans and the citizens at large need to think very carefully about who they elect as their representatives. We're in turbulent times in America, but all politics is local. And we have a candidate from the 10th Legislative District, Stephanie Boston. She's running for senator. Without hesitation, I can say I've known this woman for 15 years. She's on top of the issues, and you got to be a warrior, a fighter to get on this show. Welcome to our show, Stephanie. Always a pleasure.
Thank you
Have
very
to
much.
ask you, how's your daughter Boston?
Keeping me busy.
Okay. Well,
she's being a young lady and, as you would say, doing what her mother has guided her to do.
Okay, and that means, what's she doing?
What's
she doing today?
Well, today, right now, she's at a basketball game.
Okay, is she playing or is she watching?
She's playing
Go ahead.
basketball, getting ready for basketball season. In the meantime, she is on the varsity volleyball team at Franklin High School.
Okay, and where's Franklin located?
Reisterstown, Maryland, which is in northwest Baltimore County.
Okay, and you're running in the Baltimore County
area.
So you got your kid in public schools.
Yes.
So you're not one of those people who advocate all these changes for public schools and clandestinely got their kid in private school.
Correct.
Okay, that's good. Now, Morgan is quite a young lady and talented. I always have to sing praises to African American kids. My mother was an educator, so I have a great amount of respect for you and what you do. It's not an easy profession. I know people have had a lot of testimony about clashes in the classroom and challenges. How is she as a student, and what have you tried to instill in her as an African American teenage girl growing up in America, and specifically Maryland?
Well, I do have the luxury of actually knowing the school system because I worked in a school system. She has been rooted in education is paramount. Education is the key to success. And so your job is to be the best student that you can be. And my job is to guide her and help her become that student that I know she can be.
Well, I appreciate your coming out because I know you're like soccer moms. You're a volleyball mom and a basketball mom, and you don't miss a game. So please extend my apologies. Oh, she's a triple jumper. My daughter was a triple jumper.
She's a triple jumper.
In Burke, Virginia, and she was a triple jumper down at Eastern Mennonite. So that's a serious track move. So academically, how's she doing in school? What she wanted me? Is she interested in college? The whole 9 yards.
Well,
what's up with Miss Moore?
I know that I'm blessed. She is a honor roll student,
Praise
AP
God.
classes.
Meaning, what's AP?
AP is advanced placement classes,
Okay.
college level classes. She is the secretary of the National Honor Society.
Go ahead, girl.
She is the secretary for the Black Student Union at the school.
Go ahead.
She
got skills.
Yes, last
and leadership
year
skills.
she was selected as a Hobie candidate, and Hobie is Hugh O'Brien Youth Leadership Conference, where she went up to Mount St. Mary College over the Memorial Day weekend and learned all about leadership.
So did she stay on campus?
They stayed on campus
Did she like
for
the
about
experience?
four days.
Oh boy!
Yes, it was. We told her it was a. Don't get offended, but we told her it was the nerd convention. So
did she buy into it?
She did,
Okay.
and they students from all over the state. They still stay in contact, and they do activities throughout.
Now that's important because you never know. 10 years out, they may be running businesses together. They may be adversaries. They may be in the General Assembly. They may be in a law firm. They may be medical partners. So this is the benefit of integration if you use it properly. And I'm not saying integration and education is the end-all and be-all, but if you're going to go to school with white folks, you may as well learn what they think, how they think, what's important to them, so that you can live in both worlds. Because the unfortunate truth is, if you're African American, you have to sometimes walk in the hood and then stand up straight and speak the King's English at the drop of a hat. I had to do that. That was difficult. People say, well, you two-faced. No, I'm smart. You can call it modern-day Uncle Tom, whatever it is, but I was born and raised in Virginia. And depending on where you were, you had to act a certain way to stay out of harm's way, to stay out of jail, and just to keep your life. So I'm glad to see that you're exposing her to things as, I'm glad to know more. Her church life, you got her in church?
Yeah, she goes to Ark of Safety.
Okay,
and
that's
she's in the media. Yes, she's in the media ministry.
So she's not just a bystander sitting; she's actively involved with church.
We've she's even joined the Dungeons and Dragons club at the high school.
Time out. Dungeons and Dragons.
Her brother's got her involved in that.
What is Dungeons and Dragons? Is that
it's some type of a game.
I don't know. Is that a digital game?
It's not a
computer game.
It's a nerdy game. I don't know. Okay. All I know is that her older brothers play it with their college students.
Okay.
And they get together and they play it all night long.
Okay.
And she enjoys it. But on the lines of what you were saying about getting our children involved, exposed, one of the things that we have to constantly tell her is how special she is. And last year was a rough year for her because she realized that she was too black to be white and too white to be black. And so because she was in the advanced classes, and there was only 2 or 3 black students in those classes, she was one of 3 that was inducted into the National Honor Society, one of 3 black students out of 54.
That played well at home, but how did it do with her black friends?
And this is her fine line that she walks because of, oh, you hang out with the white kids, you're in the classes with the white kids, you're not black enough. But then, when she's with the white kids, you're black, And so we just have to, so when she went to this leadership conference at Mount St. Mary, she found kindred spirit of students that were like her, that there were a lot of other African-American students from around the state that was like her. And so it is.
It's interesting. I suffered a similar problem. Now, the way I survived coming up, and, my mother was a teacher, so you couldn't clown too much because the schools were segregated and all the black teachers knew each other, the principals knew each other. She worked for the principal. But if you didn't want to get beat and beat down, you had to find a way to amalgamate yourself with the guys who had some edge. I won't call them thugs, but you had to get along with everybody. So for a minute, I became a class clown, and I was telling jokes all the time, and before a guy could end up, teeing off for me, I was telling jokes, and that's how I got along with everybody. But in the process, you sort of make excuses for being smart. If you try to be smart in the black community, and unfortunately, we may be the only community in America, in the world, that does that. The Jews promote academics, many white folks promote academics, the Asians promote academics in their kids, but sometimes when it comes to blacks, in our own community, we sort of dog our own kids out and give them a badge of, some kind of badge of dishonor for being, if you're smart, you're white. And I think that's part of the slave mentality that we created coming out of slavery. And we have to work very hard not to fall prey to that, because some kids will deliberately fail just to get along with the black folk, and then when you fast forward and everybody's unemployed and in the penitentiary, you wish you had done something else. So difficult, that was 68 years old now. That was almost 50 years ago, and it's still happening. Still happening. Vestiges of slavery. It's not easy to be an African-American teenager, and most certainly not easy to be an African-American girl who's smart. I'm proud of your daughter. Education is one of your critical areas. Why should people vote for you? You're running for senator in the 10th Legislative District, Baltimore County. Why should people vote for Stephanie Boston?
Well, for one, it's just being visible.
Okay.
The lack of leadership that we have, she's been there for 30 years, and 30, 40 years she's been involved in the politics and things, 83 years old. Most people still have no idea who she is. Our leadership in the black community, and even though I say leadership for all, but the crucial area is the black community. The district is located, again, in northwest Baltimore County, which is the Randallstown, directly west of Baltimore City.
So that's right across the Baltimore line.
Right across 695, yes.
So you got brothers on one side and brothers on the other side, sprinkled with white folks. Or is it Randallstown is about, 80, 90% black?
Black.
Okay.
The white constituency is further north into the Owens Mills, Reisterstown area. So even though the district is about, it's about even, 60-40.
60 what?
African American, 40% white.
Now, let me ask you something, if I may interrupt. How many people does the 10th Legislative District represent? It's about 120,000 people.
Give or take.
They've carved the census up. Okay, so that's very important.
Yes. They did, on the last census, they did split the district in half by the Beltway.
Okay.
And so,
So
half
did you
of the
get more
district-
of Baltimore? Do you get any of Baltimore City, or you all in the county?
all in the county.
Oh, that's
Okay.
it. That's new.
So, but when they split us up, the east side, which borders the city, got part of the city, which was 44.
Mm-hmm.
So the city actually lost a senator. So
Wow, that's
44A, 44B is
Does that
part of
mean
the
that
city.
there has been a migration from people out of the city into the county? Somewhat.
Yes, and the city has been losing population, has been losing
Not just
numbers.
black people, but white folks too, I guess. Okay.
yes.
But some people say that white people are coming back into the city, but
It
this
just depends on where you are.
just depends on where you are. So 120,000 people you would represent. How do you think you would make a difference, and what are your key issues?
Well, one of the things I've been telling people is this: you cannot solve problems if you don't acknowledge them.
Okay.
We cannot continue to put our head in the sand and say everything is okay.
Like the ostrich.
Like the ostrich. One of the things that people don't know is that Baltimore County, 30% of the population of Baltimore County is African American.
Wow.
Okay.
Of the entire county?
Of the entire county.
Okay.
Okay. But 80% of that 30%, 80% of all African Americans that live in Baltimore County live between Route 40 and Reisterstown Road, which is my district. And so within that area, which is by design, we have the lowest performing schools. We have some of the worst crime. We have food deserts.
Really?
We have
All
we
those chicken
have-
wing places you got?
I'm talking about grocery stores.
Oh, I'm sorry. I stand
We're not
corrected.
talking about fast food greasy spoons that we
Okay.
have.
Okay.
I'm not talking about liquor stores. We're not talking about all of the bad social ills that
Okay.
we continually talk about. I'm not talking about the lack of recreation.
Okay.
Okay, we have our demographics are shifting, where the population from the city that were housing vouchers, Section 8, when they imploded, they moved them to one of two areas, and that was either in Essex on the east side of the county or Randallstown, which is the west side of the
So
county.
they've created a new
Yes.
enclave, black
Yes.
enclave, by design.
And they moved them out to the county, but they did not bring the resources.
So they just gave them vouchers and say, go for it. And they took the low-performing scores, the crime, the drugs, everything that you used to find in the inner city, now you got in
The county.
your district.
And
Okay.
so one of the things I say is the city-county line, the social ills does not stop at the city-county lines.
Okay.
The only difference between Baltimore City and Baltimore County, or I should say Randallstown, is that Randallstown has grass.
Now.
We have grass, we have trees.
Okay.
That's the difference. What you have caused or what has been created is isolation.
Okay.
And so at least when you were in the city, you had public transportation, they had the buses,
see.
they had the subway. Whereas when you move out to the county, we don't have that. There's a lack of transportation. And so how do people get out to their doctor's appointments, to all of these different things? So we have created more problems.
How do you intend to address these growing problems? And I'm assuming in your candidacy you're showing how the establishment or the incumbent is not and has not been addressing those issues. What's different about you? How are you going to be different?
Bringing people together.
Okay.
If even within the leadership, within she's a senator, 3 delegates, they're not even running on the same ticket.
Wow.
They're not even campaigning together. And so with all of that animosity going on, you cannot create one accord. You can't have one agenda. By bringing people together, I am able to travel throughout the county. It doesn't matter if you're a Democrat or you're Republican, if you're white or black, Hispanic. I'm able to communicate with you and understand your concerns and address them. And I like people.
Okay. I've always been a people person. We're going to take a music break in about 30 seconds, and then we're going to come back. I want you to think about the distinctions, the clear distinction of why when a person goes into that ballot box, why should they pull a lever for you? Who are they going to get? What kind of advocate are they going to get? Are you going to be responsive? I hate it when I call congressmen or senators and it takes 45 calls because I'll call you, dive bomb you to death, and you can't get a call back. And you only see some people doing election time. So after this music break, we'll be back with Stephanie Boston, candidate for the Maryland State Senate Legislative District number 10. Back again with News ULM. I'm Rod Willis, your host. And we're here with Stephanie Boston. She is a candidate for the Maryland State Senate Legislative District number 10. Problems with black males. What do you know about black males? I mean, what's a black woman like you? What you know about black males? Because we got a lot of problems.
Well, first of all, being raised in the Midwest, by my grandparents with my uncles. So I'm a tomboy at heart. So males. I know males. But I do have 2 sons of
Okay.
my own. And
Really?
I have 2 sons. So everyone always talks about Morgan.
Your daughter.
My daughter,
She sucks up a lot of these brilliant, beautiful, and sucks up all the oxygen in the room.
Well, when she's home, my sons remind her that she was last.
Okay. Good. Okay.
So
Do they protect her? They take.
very much.
Very good,
much.
very good.
Very much. And
I tell my grandson that's his job, to take care of his baby sister.
and
So-
they know that. So I've left the country and they've taken care
Well,
of her.
African American males have some unique problems, and you have inherited an onslaught of black males that have now been placed in your legislative district. What are the challenges with unemployment, education, low success rates in terms of high school, over incarceration of black males? What's the remedy?
Well, first of all, one of the things that I learned coming here to Baltimore from Ohio is I learned very quickly, that I had to learn to be an advocate for my sons.
Why?
Especially since they were intelligent young men.
Mm-hmm.
And the school system doesn't really know how to address the intellect of young black males.
I've heard that, and I see that, and I see the challenges. My son has had to go up to school, and he's made all A's, but well, he got a B this time because they lost a paper. Oh, well, here's the paper. Oh, we don't know how that got lost, but since he made an A on that, he gets an A in accelerated math. But if he wasn't on top of it, they would have. I hate to say it, but sometimes if they can't beat you, they'll cheat you. So you got to be an advocate and you got to be up at school, stay on top of these folk, know what's going on in your school, continue.
Know your rights. Middle school, actually I started much earlier, but for my older son, sitting in a regular classroom making straight A's, and the teacher called me and said that he's a behavior problem. What? I go to the school. And I just observe, unannounced. I go to the school. You have to go unannounced because it is your right to sit in class and observe your child.
Or as they say in the hood,
Okay.
roll up on them.
Yes. The teacher had about 4 or 5 little black boys. In
the corner.
No, they're all corners of the classroom,
Mm-hmm.
All separated. My son had whatever assignment she had given him, he had finished it in about 5 minutes. Had all of it right, and so
But he was a
problem.
Okay.
But he's sitting in the back doing what an 11, 12-year-old does because he was bored. Afterwards, talked to the teacher. She started talking about his behavior, and I switched it, and I said, what are his grades? So she starts rolling off 85, 90, 100, 98, 97. I said, so it never dawned on you that maybe that he knows this work is too easy, and that he's bored?
And you're not challenging
you're
him
not challenging
intellectually.
him?
But see, they never think
No.
to challenge black kids intellectually.
Correct.
So you got to do it at home.
And so I had to insist, write a letter that he be placed in the gifted and talented class.
Okay.
Because my sons came from a private school. They came from a Catholic background. It's very important that is very, very, very important. Now, I always tell parents, the way the school system is set up, the way our education system is set up, from kindergarten to 2nd grade, it is set up that your child learns to read. Kindergarten through 2nd grade, everything is geared towards learning to read. 3rd grade on up, it's to read to learn.
Okay.
That's why we have, even though some people don't want to admit it, they have that research says about that 3rd grade reading test determines prison beds.
That's right. That's a coefficient that they take the number of kids in that grade
That
and
fail.
determine 15, 20 years out how many prison beds they're going to need, and most of them happen to be black.
Correct.
So they rigged the test.
Okay. And so all we have to do is look at research. So research already says that our little black children come to kindergarten already 2 years behind. They never catch up. So when you get in the third grade, that's when they start separating and putting them in reading. They separate them by their reading ability. Okay?
And you know this because you've taught school in the Baltimore school system.
I've taught for 27 years, and I'm a reading specialist.
Praise God.
And I'm working on my dissertation, but I have my EDD in educational leadership, specializing in curriculum and instruction.
Great.
And so it is very crucial that our children know how to read, because by the time, Baltimore City had this campaign, Reading by 9. Reading by 9, 9-year-olds are in third grade. They didn't say reading by third grade, they said reading by 9. Mm-hmm. If you're 9 years old, you're in the third grade. If our children aren't reading, they're not learning, because we read to learn everything, okay? In third grade, they'll say, oh, read this, answer these questions.
Okay.
But you do that from third grade on up. That's when they first get textbooks. That's when they go to reading groups, and they're grouping you. And our children, fourth grade, research shows, fourth grade, spike in special ed. The special ed is 85% African-American boys, okay? What's the criteria for special ed? 2 years behind in reading or math, and 2 years behind your grade level.
Question, is it something unique about African-American males that puts them in this posture? Are African-American girls in that classification, or why aren't they? Why is it that African-American males are not making the grade? Is something happening that pigeonholes us in these categories?
I don't want to just say it's black males, but it is boys. Boys in the way society treats little girls and boys. They make little girls sit down and be young ladies and listen and read. They tell little boys, go outside and play. Okay? We don't teach our sons self-discipline.
Right.
Instead of trying to not control the energy, but have them self-control, self-discipline that energy, we're going to go tell them to go play football. We're going to go tell them to play soccer. We're going to have them go outside so they can use up that energy. It don't work. They just get tired. They sit for a minute, then they right back up. But the point is that we have to teach our children, all of them, self-discipline, self-control, so that when the teacher does say, pay attention, I can actually sit down and pay attention. We have to start modeling the behaviors that we want our children to do. Has your son seen you actually pick up a book? Has your son seen you read a newspaper or a magazine? What is being done at home so that they know that education is important? I always have a lot of parents talk about how education is important, but everything that they do tells me otherwise. I call it lip service. Our little black boys are so, they're an endangered species. And if we can get them to read, it doesn't really, I don't want to say it doesn't matter what they read, get them to read comic books. I'm sorry, they call them graphic novels now.
Oh, excuse me.
Read graphic novels. One of the things I used to do with my sons is Monday through Thursday, they weren't allowed to watch TV.
Praise God.
Nor play video games. But boy, did they read the strategy guides to those video games. And because they actually read the strategy guides to the video games, the strategy guides are actually on a higher level, because anything technical is higher level reading. They're excellent readers.
So it helped them to determine how the video worked, and not just that it did work if you pushed the button. And that's interesting because my wife was substitute teaching in Cherry Hill, and she was teaching a computer class, teaching kids how to repair computers, and she encouraged them to learn how to program to create their own computer games. And I said, why would I want to do that when I can just go online and play any game I want to?
Right.
Well, the Asian kids 10 years out are going to be making games and selling them to us. And we're going to be buying their games and playing their games and having no skills. And unfortunately, some of us are headed to the penitentiary. So we got to change the paradigm. I'm fascinated with what you said. My son is raising his 2 children half of the month. And they didn't watch television when they were with him. They were reading. They were doing something educational. And, you know, when he didn't have them doing that, they were involved with soccer or something. So you got to get involved with your kids, and most certainly you've presented some interesting steps that our society has to take if we're to rescue and capture these black males. And it's interesting the distinction that you've made between what black girls go through and what is expected of them and what's expected of black males. And you raised 2 black boys, so that's a good thing. What are the other key issues? Public safety, crime, and economic development. You talked about food deserts. Address both of those, and then we're going to go to another music break. And
Okay.
but just address those 2 issues. What are we going to do? What are we doing about the crime that has come into the county or been accelerated by virtue of the new demographics? And what are we going to do about health and healthy eating?
Well, when we talk about crime, we talk about safety. One of the things that I don't want, that most people don't want, we don't want martial law. We always keep hearing about more police officers, more police officers. That's being reactive. If we start concentrating on being proactive, we wouldn't need that. And so what I mean by being proactive, if you look at the statistics, because everybody loves looking at statistics, looking at numbers, and that gives us a starting point. In my district in particular, we look at the crime rising. But what type of crime is rising? Private or private homes, private businesses, vandalism, theft, crimes that 15 to about 21-year-olds do.
Really?
And why are they vandalizing homes? Why are they vandalizing your car, breaking into your car and breaking windows and all of those different types of things? They don't have anything else to do.
This is primarily black males or black females doing this, or is it primarily black males?
Primarily black males.
Okay.
Okay.
So again, we go back to the same core problem.
Core problems. And so when we talk about how do we address our safety issues, a crime rate, it boils down to is what foundation have we given our children? What outlets have we given our children? Or we're leaving it up to them to find outlets to do.
You mentioned that there had been not an increase of recreational opportunities as they moved a new part of the populace into your legislative district. What are you going to do about more recreation or structured activities so that these black youth who happen to be black males can sort of stay out of the criminal justice system?
Well, one of the things that I would like to do to address all of that is it's not necessarily more money, but reallocate the monies that are already given to education. And one of the things we keep hearing about in education is air conditioning and heating and remodeling of the buildings, and the buildings are old. Okay, that's good. That's important. However, what about the curriculum, the educational programs?
Right.
Our children are not learning.
The bricks and mortar alone don't cut it.
The bricks and mortar don't cut it.
Because I was raised, you didn't have no air conditioning, was a fan. And I'm not talking about an electric fan. I'm talking about one of those things you made yourself.
Full of paper.
But we did learn, so I agree.
And so what I would like to do is, with some of those funds, is actually have after-school programs and summer school programs where we are actually addressing and remediating programs for our students. if you already know that they're behind and they never catch up, what is the plan to help them catch up? If we look at the test scores, we're not going to talk about test scores. We're not going to talk about how our former county exec was talking about 90% graduation rate, but the test scores, the state test scores, we have one high school in my district where only 9% of the students pass.
Did you say 90 or 9?
No, 9. 9% of the students.
N-I-N-E?
Yes. 9% of the students pass the high school assessment.
So that means
state.
91% failed or did not. Wow.
Okay? And
That's criminal.
Correct. But they're passing. And they're saying 89%, 90% of the students in our high schools, and when I say our, I'm talking about in District 10, are graduating. But they have no skills to do nothing. They can't pass a civil service test to go into the service. And
I understand in some places in Baltimore City, I'm not sure if in the county, they've taken cursive writing out of the curriculum,
right.
So they can't even sign their name to get a check if they got one.
Well, I put it
I mean,
this
that's
way.
stupid.
When you give a young person a card, don't write in cursive writing, because they're just gonna go, oh, thanks, and take the money out and put the card aside. So if you say, you didn't even read the card, they can't read the card because it's in cursive writing. So don't write in cursive if you want them to know what you said.
Whose bright idea was that to take, I mean, the premise of all signed documents in the legal community is a signature. I mean, whose bright idea was it to take cursive writing out of the curriculum? I believe in the 3rd and 4th grade, that's when you developed your penmanship. You were proud of it. And I never forget, Miss Nettie Brown used to come through with a ruler and crack my knuckles at Rod Willis. Chicken scratch. Pop your knuckles, write it again. So I learned. To slow down and try to form letters that somebody could read other than me.
Yes. That's the school board.
So you got your hands full.
And so when we talk about addressing the issues, we keep hearing people talk about job training and getting young people in Job Corps and job training. If they can't read,
and if you can't write their name,
train you, because in any job training, any type of prep, any type of, at the end of that class is a test. And if you can't read that test nor answer the questions, you will not pass that test. And you have a classroom full of people who will start, but you will be lucky if you have 10 people finish the class. And you will hear elected officials talk about, well, we offer it, but people just don't participate.
And why is that?
Because they can't do the work.
Mm-hmm.
They're not prepared to take on the class. And so when you hear vocational training,
Go ahead.
When you hear about our schools need more vocational training and get them ready for the trades, please know that in any vocational training, you have to have at least an 8th grade education in order to pass the test, okay? Get a young person and give them a ruler. Ask them to measure out 1 3/4 inches.
Can't do it.
Or 3/4 of an inch. They can't use rulers. What's 1/4 times 3?
So you can't get into construction trades because everything is cut and distance. And
no, it's measured twice.
That's
cut
right. Then
once.
cut. Go ahead, girl.
Okay.
I see you've done some home improvement.
There's only so much you can do. There's only so many, quote, general laborers. Because even if you see folks out on the construction line on the highway have the stop and start, slow, holding that, there's a class for that. You got it's called traffic control.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so they got to take at least a 3-hour class just to be able to
So
hold.
if you can't pass that test, you can't even get in the game to turn a sign.
Correct. And there's only so many general labor jobs that can sweep up and clean up a construction site.
Stephanie, I want you to end up with, this has been fascinating. I wish we had more time. I'm going to ask you to stay on for the second half of the show because many of the issues we have Pastor Stephen Tillett on, and he is not only an advocate, author, but he's president of the Anne Arundel County branch of the NAACP. Some issues are going on that mirror exactly what you're talking about with black males and violence and over-incarceration. But I want you to address, what do we do about the food deserts? And after you address that, I want you to give your, tell people how they can get in touch with you, how they can donate to you, and when's the election, when should they get out of the house and vote?
Okay, food deserts. First of all, the definition of a food desert is not having a grocery store within a mile of your house.
Wow.
If you do not have a grocery store within a mile of your house, that's considered a food desert.
And what does that mean?
So that means that what it looks like in my district is that I have a lot of senior citizens who are walking to the Dollar General, the Dollar Tree, and going grocery shopping at the Dollar General, at the Dollar Tree.
For that cheap white bread.
For the cheap bread, all of the processed foods, everything that's not good for you, no fresh foods or vegetables, no fresh meats. Everything is microwavable and things of this sort. Again,
adds to our diabetes and adds to our obesity, cancer, the whole 9 yards.
Whole 9 yards. Everything that's bad for you is at that Dollar General. So I can honestly say the only time I go into Dollar General.
Where have I heard that before?
Only time I go into Dollar General is when I'm getting ready to go to the movies and get some candy.
There you go.
For the monthly
That's right. That's right. And
So,
you're playing for that high-priced candy when you can get it at the dollar store.
Get at the dollar store. And so how do we address that? We have to address it. We do have these, Wegmans coming in and all of these large grocery store chains coming in. But we need to start having our elected officials actually having them more. Somehow I don't know what the answer is, but somehow we have to start addressing the food deserts.
Stephanie Boston, this has been enlightening. I'm pretty well read, and you, as boards down homes, have educated me to some serious issues that I had not thought about from that angle, and that's what we need. Politicians and elected officials that are reading, that are studying the trends, that can help us navigate through this malaise of just bad decisions. And I'm hopeful that people will come out and give a serious look at your candidacy. If people want to get in touch with you, donate to your candidacy, who would they call and what would their number and website be?
I can be reached at stephanieboston.com.
Okay.
That's my website. stephanieboston.com. My email address is electstephanieboston@gmail.com. And if you go to my website, I do have a donate page. And,
okay.
And yes, I do need help and assistance with that. The election, early voting, starts October 25th, and it goes for a week. And then I call it D-Day.
Okay.
Election Day is November the 6th, Tuesday, November the 6th. We really need to start having people really think about what is. What is. I've seen a lot of signs, vote for Democrats, stop Trump. Please know your facts. Please know that the only people in elected offices that can stop Trump are your federal people, the people that go to D.C., go to Washington, D.C., not your state officials that go to Annapolis. And so has your national, your congressmen, your senators have they come to your neighborhood? Have they asked for your vote? Who exactly is your congressman? Some people don't know who their congressman is. Some people aren't aware that Ben Cardin is up for re-election, who is our U.S. senator. They don't know that. And they're thinking it's just the local officials that go to Annapolis. No.
Okay.
No, we need to know this is part of civics.
Civics
This
101.
is Civics 101. So our local officials, your local officials are those who are county-wide. So in Prince George's County, they go to, was it Rockville? Upper Marlboro.
Upper Marlboro.
Your Upper Marlboro is
Right.
your county seat, okay? Your state officials, they go to Annapolis. And then your federal officials, they're the ones who go to D.C. They're the ones that we see every night on television talking about Trump, Trump, Trump. So what are your federal officials doing? Have they come out and asked you to vote? And so,
And all politics is local, so they got to deal with local issues, get involved with the PTA. And Ms. Boston?
don't vote on emotions. They're scare tactics. Please, please, please use your brain. Ask questions.
That's right.
Ask questions. Don't do fear tactics.
And we're going to have you back.
Yes.
I know you're running to get back to your daughter, but you're most certainly welcomed to participate in the second part of the show. We're going to have a music break. And when we come back, we're going to have some video that deals with our author and issues concerning Anne Arundel County, issues concerning African Americans in our state capital, and what has transpired. There were issues of Hangsman's nooses and very ugly racist signs that were being sprayed across the county, and we want to know is what's the result? What are we doing now? Has it improved? We'll be back after this music break. I'll give it to you. We're welcome back to News ULM. I'm Rod Willis, your host, and we have to my immediate left Reverend Stephen Tillett, and he is the president of the Anne Arundel County branch of the NAACP. We got music video coming up and some video on his book, and then we're going to go right in to the subject matter. Where is the black community in Anne Arundel County? He attended the national conference this summer. I believe it was in San Antonio. So he's going to give us a status report on what the black folk have to do to enhance the race. We'll hear from him and the rest of the show after these videos.
If you really love him, and there's nothing I can do, don't try to spare my feelings, just tell me that we're through, and make it easy on yourself. Make it easy on yourself, 'cause breaking up is so very hard to do. If the way I hold you can't compare to his caress, no words of consolation will make me miss you less. My darling, if this is goodbye, I know I'm gonna cry. So run to
Hello, family. I'm Stephen Tillett, retired Air Force chaplain and a pastor for the past 28 years. I want to talk to you for a minute about lies. Some lies are innocent and cause no harm, like tales about tooth fairies and Easter bunnies. But some lies are straight-up falsehood. One such lie is the lie about race. There is only one race, family, the human race. But so many things in this country have been organized around this lie that people of similar need and circumstance are intentionally kept at each other's throats, so they never focus their attention on their common enemy, the greed that permeates almost every aspect of American life. That compelled me to write my new book, Stop Falling for the Okie Doke, How the Lie of Race Continues to Undermine Our Country. The weaponized and unscientific concept around skin color has led us to the unfortunate place we're in our country today. A prime example is the Electoral College and the results that it sometimes forces on us contrary to the expressed will of most voters. It is based entirely around America's original sin of slavery. It is the 18th century's gag gift to the 21st century. We need to stop living this lie, and I wrote my book to expose some truths we all need to be aware of. I'm Stephen Tillett, and I ask you to get your copy of Stop Falling for the Okie Doke today. A few years ago, my daughter gave me Howard Zinn's book, A People's History of the United States, as a birthday gift. It changed my life. It contains so much history that I had never encountered in my education all the way through grad school. How could so much truth be intentionally left out of the propaganda they taught as history in school? And one of the biggest lies we've been told that has damaged our country from the beginning is the lie of race, the non-scientific concept that different ethnic groups are supposedly completely different races. In fact, at the genetic level, the DNA of every human on the planet is 99.9% the same. But that foundational lie has helped to undergird a system that keeps all poor and struggling people at each other's throats while the chief offenders keep getting paid. It's all about greed, and I say no more. Stop Falling for the Okie Doke, How the Lie of Race Continues to Undermine Our Country, shows the connection between poverty, our toxic politics, and the lie of race, and offers some solutions to get us out of this mess. Please buy 2 copies today and share one with a friend. Hello, family. I'm Stephen Tillett, retired Air Force chaplain, a pastor for the past 28 years, and author of the new book, Stop Falling for the Okie Doke, How the Lie of Race Continues to Undermine Our Country. I'm also honored to be the recipient of the 2018 Peacemaker Award from the annual Martin Luther King Jr. Dinner Committee. During Black History Month, there will be a lot of focus on Dr. King as a dreamer. But Dr. King was more than just a dreamer. In his book, A Testament of Hope, Dr. King wrote, "If we look honestly at the realities of our national life, it is clear that we are not marching forward. We are groping and stumbling. We are divided and confused. Our moral values and our spiritual confidence sink, even as our material wealth ascends. In forcing America to face all its interrelated flaws, racism, poverty, militarism, and materialism, it is exposing evils that are rooted deeply in the whole structure of our society. It reveals systemic rather than superficial flaws and suggests that radical reconstruction of society itself is the real issue to be faced. Family, it's time to stop falling for the okie doke and to make Dr. King's dream become a reality." This is Stephen Tillett, author of Stop Falling for the Okie Doke. Please get 2 copies today and give one to a friend.
Stephen Tillett, always a pleasure. Stop Falling for the Okie Doke, a relevant book. It was relevant 6 months ago when I met you. It's relevant now. Why is this book so important? And again, what motivated you to write this book?
I was motivated to write it because things have to make sense to me.
Okay.
Some of the things that Ms. Boston was saying in the prior segment. okay, I clearly don't have technical skills, so I'm not even going to try. That some of the things she was saying in the prior segment about things that are clear as day with respect to our students and their performance or non-performance in school.
Right.
And yet, like with her son. So I want to talk about your son's behavior. Well, let's talk about his academics. How's he doing? He's scoring very well.
They don't want to talk about that.
Maybe he's bored. Maybe you're not challenging him enough. And that happens a lot. That happened with my son as well, who's a bright student. But then another thing, you asked about some things that are happening in Anne Arundel County. Right now, we have a lead problem.
Really?
In the water in the public schools.
Mm.
And so what has happened is there's a process that the County Board of Education is undertaking where they're saying, okay, well, we're going to go from the north end of the county to the southern end of the county to test. But COMAR, the state regulation, says you need to test elementary schools first.
Hello.
Because those are the younger students that have
do the
that can
most
be
damage.
most negatively
That's right.
impacted
Exactly.
by lead, which can then lead to the preschool to prison pipeline.
So how has
And
the
then
county
also the
responded to
older
that?
buildings,
Right.
because those are the ones that are more likely
Right.
to have issues with lead. Well, the superintendent and a group of folks met with him, and I'll tell you about that new group in a minute. And he essentially said, this is our plan, this is what we're doing. Okay, but what you're doing is contrary to what state law says, and contrary to logic. The logic of logistics, north to south, we get. But when you consider the student population, you want to take care of the elementary schools first, and then you want to go to the older buildings next.
And
Because those are the ones most likely to have lead issues.
I don't want to be so presumptuous, but are they taking care of the white folks first and the black folks last?
No.
They're not. Okay.
No. But that's not okay because white folk can get lead poisoning too.
That's
So
right.
it's still.
I'm calling it. You know, I
Right.
want to ask the questions. I'm
Right.
supposed to ask the tough questions. So what are they going to do? How are you going to deal with that? And you talk about environmental justice, environmental racism. We have to watch everything. Clean air, clean water. It is a historical fact that led to the downfall of the Greek and Roman Empire. Many of the Greeks and Romans used lead goblets for their wine, and it tasted good, but they didn't know it was making them dumb and insane. Lead in your brain will make you insane. So, and in many public schools in Washington, D.C. and in Baltimore 15 years ago, you can't drink out of a water fountain.
You still can't.
They bring in water jugs because the lead is killing us.
And they had to get a special dispensation from the superintendent to go out to families to say, yes, your children can bring water bottles to school. Huh?
When the lead in the pipes is killing them.
Well, yeah, could potentially be
Sure.
damaging them. Yes, yes. And I didn't know that there was a ban of kids being able to bring water from home anyway. But so, and that just points to systems. That there are a lot of things that systems do that just are not logical, but they do them anyway because that's what they know how to do. That's all they know how to do. I preached a sermon some years ago, the 7 last words of the church. But that's not just the 7 last words of the church. It's just the 7 last words of systems. We don't do it that way here. We've never done it that way before.
I see.
That's nonsense. If there's a situation where you need to respond this way as opposed to what you thought was the best idea, change your plan. Don't go north to south. Go elementary schools first, older buildings next, then the rest.
What is the prospect or the specter of your being able to convince them that that's what they need to do to preserve the intellectual and developmental progress of our most vulnerable citizens?
Usually you have to shame people into doing it.
You have to act ignorant and act, not ignorant, but precise.
You don't have to act ignorant. Just in this instance, we just point out the law. This is what COMAR says. The state regulation says you all are acting contrary to state regulation. Fix it.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a new organization that is forming in Anne Arundel County, and we're actually having our launch on October 4th, Thursday, October 4th.
I'll be
7
there.
p.m. And it's called, we're an IAF affiliate, Industrial Areas Foundation, and our organization in Anne Arundel County will be known as ACT, Anne Arundel Connecting Together.
Okay.
So if you're familiar with BUILD in Baltimore,
Sure.
WIN in Washington, D.C., PATH in Howard County, AIM in Montgomery
All
County.
these acronyms.
Right,
That's
right,
right.
but we're one of those affiliates, and we have over 50 in the country, 60 worldwide.
What's
and
your
it's
mission and mandate?
Community organizing, organized people plus organized money equals organized power. That we help people to understand that we're the ones in positions of power, and that we treat our elected public servants with respect, but also with insistence. The
That's right.
insistence that a boss should have to say, "You work for us."
That's right. And
And
a
so
lot of us
this
have
is
it
what you
twisted.
need.
They think that we work for them.
Right.
And they, in reality, work for us because we elected them.
True. However, one of the systems things, and I'm sure Ms. Boston could talk about this, with the gerrymandering.
Right.
Okay? So one of the things that the elected people do is that they have put themselves in a position to choose their voters. So rather than the voters choosing the reps choose the voters. Then the districts are fashioned around what they want, so that essentially if they can weather a primary challenge, they can stay in office forever. How long has Ms. Kelly been in office?
30 years.
And
30
she's
30 years.
83 years old.
Yeah.
And as you indicate before, she's always won in the primary.
Right.
8,000 votes.
Right.
in
And no
our
opposition.
district.
Right, and then you're running as a Republican, and so for a lot of African Americans, oh my God, Republican? No, it's like hold on, hold up, wait a minute. That's just we need to hear what any candidate, Democrat, Republican, Independent, Green, Libertarian, what's their platform?
And what's their
What are
track
they
record
saying?
of producing? What have you produced? Have you produced any recreational centers in your legislative district?
Right.
How the test scores going for the kids?
Right.
And when's the last time I've used to write for the Afro, and I got blasted by Democrats because I exposed the fact that a Democratic mayor and his henchmen there were no textbooks in certain classes in Frederick Douglass High School, and they thought it was horrible. I was exposing. Well, wait a minute, you guys get millions of dollars, and people making big salaries up on North Avenue, but nobody is concerned about the fact that black kids at Frederick Douglass, one of the oldest institutions of learning that black folk could go to. My great aunt from Charlottesville, Virginia, had to leave Virginia because they only had a school up to the 7th grade.
Okay.
To go to high school, she had to come to Baltimore, and she came to Frederick Douglass.
And that same high school last year got blasted again because they had no student pass the high school assessment.
None?
0.
Wow.
So they
So-
just earning checks up there.
Yeah. So yes.
But a lot of it is foundational, because what Stephanie said about you learn to read grades 1 through 3, and then you read to learn after that. So that if you have kids that have not learned to read properly, then you don't give up in grade 4. You don't begin to calculate prison bed
Right.
construction, prison construction. What you do is you reach back around and you get those that whatever you were doing grades K through 3 didn't work, get it right, so that they can learn to read beyond an 8th grade level, but at least at an 8th grade level, so they can pass the vocational tests and other things of that nature and have a life where they can be independent. But it's all systemic. And a lot of it is just driven by the fact that people get comfortable where they are. And so that's why in my book, and I know for instance, my great-grandfather ran was a state senator in North Carolina during Reconstruction as a Republican, ran for Congress.
My daddy was a Republican.
Right, and
All black people were
yeah,
Republicans.
well, that's true. Yeah, most African Americans
It didn't
were
change until
Republicans. No, they didn't change till Roosevelt.
Roosevelt.
So they were Republican up to Roosevelt. Then they became Democrats, and so then of course the white folks who were Democrats oppressing African Americans
Became Dixiecrats and Republicans.
became Dixiecrats, and then have become Republicans. But the real okie doke of it is that you have that whatever their policies are, they don't really concern themselves with struggling people of any hue.
Right.
Okay? And so you have African Americans and poor white people who are busy
Knuckling
beefing
it
with
out.
each
That's
other.
right.
When indeed they need to look around and say, well, wait a minute, who's messing both of us over?
That's right.
There's a movie called Bulworth that Warren Beatty was
Yes.
in
Yeah.
back in the late 90s. And he essentially plays the role of a person running for re-election to U.S. Senate in California. And he for a variety of circumstances, ends up in the hood and hanging out with some folks for a while and gets a different perspective. And when he's on a particular show, he says, you know what? He said, the rich people divide brown people from white people. He said, but white people have a whole lot more in common with colored people than they do with rich people. But they don't understand that. And so then the game that Lyndon Johnson talked about, he said, if you can convince the lowest white man that he's better than the best colored man, you won't have to pick his pockets. He said, hell, give him somebody to look down on. He'll empty his pockets for you.
That's right. Well, that was George Wallace, Cornelius Wallace's playbook.
Right.
He would knock white folks in the head and say, I'm not going to do a damn thing for you, but I can tell you one thing. For every time I hit you in the head, I'm going to hit this black man in the head, and he called them Negroes, in the head 50 times. And I said, yeah, I'll vote for you. And both of them were broke and poor.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's the old okey doke. How can people get this book?
Our website is stopfallingfortheokeydoke.com.
Okay.
And you go there, you'll see some icons where you can order it. You can order it through Amazon.
Thank you. The timing of this.
And I ask you to share
Right.
once you've read it. And again, I wrote the book intentionally so that it would be short,
Right.
that it would be something that was consumable, easy to understand.
Utilitarian.
And utilitarian,
There
right.
you
So that for folks that don't read a lot, because I remember when I wrote it, one of the members of my congregation said, all right, Pastor, how long is this book? Because I don't do a lot
That's
of
right.
reading.
How about that?
I said, it's
and
only,
there ain't no pictures in it, so let's get to the meat.
140 pages. Oh, okay, I can do that. And so what I've done is I start off in chapter 1 talking about my personal family history. And during the break, we were talking about DNA and our family, our ancestry. Went to AfricanAncestry.com.
There you go.
Gave them my money, the best $550 I ever spent. And so I was able to find out the Matra clan and the Patra clan.
Okay.
As a man, we've got XY. We can do both.
Chromosomes.
Women can just do X. So through my mother, I found out we are the Timne from Sierra Leone.
West Africa.
From my dad, found out we are the Mbundu from Angola. And then I have a cousin that just took it for me because there's some DNA that I couldn't get to. But we had heard oral history from my grandmother's older brother that indicated that my great-grandfather's grandfather had been an African prince.
Wow.
Who had been captured and brought here. So my cousin Reggie in North Carolina did his DNA, and it turns out that they're from Gabon, the Mende people.
Gabon is French.
West.
Yes.
West
That's
Africa.
also, it's also
West.
West Africa.
So
West
that's all of
African,
the colonies they took
up
all the slaves.
up near Cameroon,
On the-
Central West
I call it
Africa.
the hook.
Yeah, the hook, right, exactly,
yeah.
exactly.
Okay.
But that was important to me, and then I shared with my children, my nieces and cousins, and said, here's where we're really from. Because until then, all I could say was, well, my mom's people are from Mississippi, my dad's people from North Carolina. Now I can say
and some
Sierra
white man
Leone,
owned the plantation,
Gabon,
and that's where my people are
Angola.
from, right?
And I appreciate
That's
knowing
wonderful, wonderful. My wife has taken up the banner for our family, and we're probably going to dedicate our entire show, a series of shows, to this whole thing. It's extremely important for us to know from whence we come and who we are and whose we are, because that makes a whole difference in terms of if you don't know where you've been, you most certainly aren't going to know where you're going.
Right.
Last time you were here, we had some problems in Anne Arundel County, some Hangsman's nooses and some Nazi swastikas and some KKKs painted. What kind of progress has the county made in terms of addressing that, and how are the young people faring in terms of this new attitude, or if any?
Well, it's a new school year, so the year is young. We can't really say what this year is going to look like. The superintendent did change their focus to say this year our focus is all about relationships, building relationships between teachers and students. And then if you include what the Office of Equity has always been saying since 2006 or so, that we need for people to become more fluent, bilingual, if you will, to understand other cultures, so that then what you might perceive is insubordination
And hostility.
is essentially, well, you came at them with disrespect, you're getting what you put out. So instead, so rather than just making it a habit of you just papering them to death and we're going to refer, suspend, expend, expel, that instead we learn how to engage each other in respectful conversation. One of the biggest challenges, that we have in Anne Arundel County is that we're about 21%, 22% of the population in the schools, and we are about 44% of the children who are suspended and expelled.
I was about to ask you about
and that, unfortunately, that's been very stubborn. The achievement gap has actually closed some.
Now,
but the discipline gap has very stubbornly remained 2 to 1 for the last decade or more in spite of efforts.
Using those statistics as a basis for this conversation, is there any correlation between the numerical or demographics of the population of African Americans and those who are incarcerated in Annapolis and Anne Arundel County? Do we know what those statistics are?
I do not know. I will research, and the next time you ask me, I will know, although I will say that as in most prison systems around the country, our population, the population of brown people in prison, is disproportionate to their numbers in the general population. One thing that makes that even scarier is that at the federal level, and you were talking about the difference between the state, county, state, or city or county, state, and federal, is that at the federal level, we have people who are connected financially and ideologically with the folks that own prisons. And so while President Obama and Attorney General Holder were focusing on getting nonviolent offenders out of prison because many of them shouldn't have been there in the first place.
That's right.
Getting them back to their communities, because when you remove that many people from community, it's going to throw the community out of sync, out of kilter, and that creates even more problems. So now you have Jefferson Beauregard Sessions, who is the Attorney General. Lord have mercy. And about the only thing he's gotten right, in my opinion, is that he recused himself from the Russia investigation.
Reluctantly.
So as to allow it proceed as it should proceed, and the chips will fall where they may. But everything else that they have basically canceled decrees that they had with police departments that were under DOJ decrees for prejudicial enforcement or malignant enforcement of their malicious enforcement of their powers. Those have been canceled out. They want to go back to the failed war on drugs and try it again because, again, we can put more brown people in jail and keep our prison buddies
And through
happy.
executive order, they have allowed all of that military hardware coming back from Iraq and Afghanistan to go to the police departments.
Yes.
So they're bringing on heavy armor, heavy artillery to do something to black and brown people. I want you earlier this summer, I communicated with you. I tried to get you to come on the show. You told me you were in Austin.
San Antonio.
San Antonio. You went to the national conventions. What was the dialogue there? Where is the national going for the NAACP? What are the national issues similar to the local issues that you and Stephanie have been talking? Is it just the same old song, deja vu all over again?
We're on your show, so I'm going to be polite and just say same stuff, different day.
SOS.
But
Same old stuff.
Oh, okay.
But here it is. Here it is. The mantra is very simple: defeat hate, vote. And so the point that our national president Derek Johnson was making, and everyone else, and we just continue to make over and over again: if you don't like the way things are going, you need to vote. Now there's an expression that is used in our republic in general that just needs to be taken out: midterm election. There is no such thing as a midterm election. Whether it's an even year or an odd year or a presidential year, if the polls are open, take your hips down to the polls and vote for somebody.
There you go.
Ideally, you should educate yourself on who's running and what they stand for before you go. And then here's the other thing that we forget. We want everybody to go vote. But after they vote, and people that you either supported or didn't support, after they get in, they work for you.
That's right.
Okay, I didn't vote for you, but you ran, so you're now the senator for this entire district.
You're my representative.
You're my representative.
So you work for me.
And we need to hold them accountable. Our people will go vote and then go home and say, okay, do a good job. No.
Or my man didn't win, or my girl didn't win, so I ain't got no rap for him for 4 years.
The person that's in office represents everybody in that district.
And they're duty bound to listen to you and pick up your phone. Stephanie Boston, we got about 2-3 minutes. Is there a question that you have for? You guys need to know each other and stay connected, because I see that you're on the same wavelength ideologically. Is there a question that you have for him in terms of, because he's on the front lines, you're on the front lines. Let's wrap this thing up because we got about 2 minutes to go.
I have a question. And the NAACP is supposed to be nonpartisan, right?
Emphasis on supposed to be.
I said supposed to be nonpartisan.
Yeah.
Okay. I've been listening to you talk about how we have more in common than we have differences. We're the human race. Okay.
We got 30 seconds.
Okay, I'm sorry. My question is, why is it seems as if that black folks, our folks, are afraid of white folks? Why? And when I say afraid, where I'm in Baltimore County, I said specifically, we need to, being the NAACP, we need to sit down and talk to each county executive candidate, the Democratic and the Republican. Why? Because one of them are going to be representing us, and we need to form relationships so that we can be at the table when they make a decision.
We got 30 seconds.
You're either at the table or on the menu.
And so we haven't been at the table.
Right. And so the direction I thought you were going to go in, a lot of the thing with the NAACP, they're talking about helping the blue wave. We are nonpartisan, but I think when you look at this Congress, now this is at the federal level, you look at this Congress and that they have been so horrific for communities of color, for poor people, that needed to be changed. But our people also need to be re-educated to understand that everyone who's a Republican should at least listen and hear what you have to say. My dad had a saying, the only difference between Democrats and Republicans is that the Democrats will usually kiss you first, okay? But they're all politicians, and at the end they need to be held accountable, or if you don't hold them accountable, you get what you get.
Thank you so much for joining our show. Stephanie Boston, good luck. I want you all to go to her website. Stop falling for the okie doke. Reverend Stephen Tillett, and also president of the Anne Arundel County branch of the NAACP. I'm Rod Willis, your host. Never enough time. We'll be back next week. Until next week, praise God and be strong.
Still checking each other out. Hey, nobody wants to blow. Nobody wants to be left out. You can't leave cause your heart is there, but you can't stay cause you've been somewhere else. You can't cry cause you look broke down, but you're crying anyway cause you're all broke down. It's a family affair.
Family affair.
It's a family